A beautiful game made by a husband and wife that's been 8 years in the making, with developers going missing and a community scratching their heads as to what the hell went wrong. I'm Wicked Wiz, being a man of my word and standing outside your house. This is what went wrong with Cube World, an amazing game with a lot of promise, poor developer communication, and a final release that nobody was expecting. Massive thanks to my patrons who help support the channel. You guys make content like this possible. Because there are essentially two versions of this game, the alpha and the final release, I'm going to try and explain the game as broadly as possible because although these two versions share a lot in common, both are very different, which we'll look into in a bit. Cube World, in the grand scheme of things, is a procedurally generated RPG with unlimited exploration. The concept is straightforward. You start off with barely anything, explore a cute yet dangerous world, encounter both friendly and hostile NPCs, do quests, and find loot. Rinse and repeat. The map is big and split up into multiple procedurally generated regions, and when I say this map is big, I mean it's really big, because without a mount you could run for a good 10 minutes to get from one point of interest to another. There are 4 different classes to pick from: the warrior, ranger, mage, and the rogue, each with their own unique playstyle and choice of 2 swappable specialisms. Character customization allows you to play as a few different races, with my favorite being the frog because frogs are cool. Neither one of these races come with any base stats, at least from what I see, which is nice to see in an RPG and gives you freedom of choice without worrying about any meta. The combat mechanics are simple yet largely skill based. Left click is your quick basic attack and right click is your slower, heavier attack. You can roll away from trouble like it's Dark Souls and chug potions during combat to give your feeble self any kind of a chance. The aim of the game is quite simply to explore, obtain better gear and progress throughout all the different regions. Kind of. And I say that because this is where things get a little bit complicated and the story begins. Our story starts all the way back in 2011, where a man named Wolfram von Funk, also known as Wale, would start development on a game called Cube World. In June of 2011, he released 4 videos on YouTube sharing an early concept of the game, and within just 1 month, the game appeared to develop from this to this. These short videos, along with now deleted blog posts, would circulate online and quickly gain interest from a newly forming fan base. Although niche, the hype and mystery surrounding this game would only grow as people began to talk and theorize about what this game was and what it would be all about. Wale received a bunch of questions over on his Twitter, as well as positive interest for Cube World. His wife Sarah joined in, leading the art design, and for the next couple of years, screenshots of the game would be released on Wale's blog, Twitter, and YouTube. Updates and screenshots were coming out with a good amount of consistency and pretty much monthly. Throughout this time, fans of the game would hear news about an alpha release being published at some point in 2013. Looking through his Twitter during June of 2013, it becomes quite clear that the hype for this game was pretty big. So big that inevitably people with malicious intent would seek to capitalize on this with fake downloads of the game, becoming a thing to be wary of. In July of 2013, the alpha version of the game was released. Although weirdly enough, it wasn't mentioned or announced on Twitter, but either way, once people found out about it, the game sold pretty quick. So much so that the server was overloaded and Wale had to close the store as nobody was able to access the page. It actually turns out that the store page was overloaded due to a DDoS attack. Even prior to this, in June, he was struggling with too much traffic, but it's easy to assume that this could have been a fairly large fan base and wanting to get in early. These DDoS attacks would prove to become a bit of an issue later on down the line and could also be the cause to a lot of what went wrong with this game. The alpha build of the game was and still is pretty damn solid. Granted, there isn't that much content, but it will keep you going for a long while. The combat feels fluid and is pretty damn fun. You can fight much harder enemies like these cows in the background, take them on with pure skill, or be a coward like me and get the whole village to help you out. Progression in this build is truly limitless. Leveling up is straightforward, you just kill more things and get more XP. You can get skill points to play with to upgrade your character, and you can explore for as far and as long as you want, as enemies will scale with you along the way. This is all quite important information, as you'll see soon, but for now, let's continue. Between the 5th and the 23rd of July 2013, 2 updates came out, both being quite big bug fixes. Now it's important to mention that even at this time, the DDoS attacks were still coming left, right and center. This only complicated things as Wally had to essentially work multiple jobs, updating the game, fixing the website and doing customer support and so on. From the 12th of July, things on Twitter began to slow down. You see, Twitter for this project and for Wally was everyone's main source of communication and progress for the game. Wally would disappear for about a month and come back in August with a short spree of tweets in just one day. Then another month goes by and people were beginning to show some concern, as there was no sign for any new updates or even tweets about the game. In this time there were some screenshots on his blog, but not much else. Because people were worried, Wally would come back in October with one tweet to assure everybody that they're still working on the game, and then would come back in November with more tweets showing some more progress. This would continue and the hype train was pretty much back on. Even with this less consistent form of communication, the fans knew that the game was being worked on just by 2 people. This would continue until January of 2014, where a big update for a questing system was teased. Now this was pretty exciting because everybody had something to look forward to. This was it. The game was going to be even better than before. A couple months go by and in April there are a few tweets talking about the questing system, and in May there was another blog post about it, and then a month later after that, Wally releases a trailer for this new big update. It looked pretty cool and it was a relief to see some progress on this new update. Sure, the communication was more spaced out than before. People can rest assured that the game is clearly being worked on. But shortly after this video, Wally just disappeared. This wasn't another month without a tweet or a screenshot. He was just gone. No updates, no posts, no nothing. Did something happen? Is Wally okay? There were theories going around that he did a runner and abandoned the game, just took all the money and left. People still believed in Wally and the project, but speculation around the game started to grow. Finally, on the 10th of October 2015, a rather strange tweet came out, where Wally would say, "I'm currently adding music to Cube World." After a year and a half, Wally came back as if nothing happened, and from this point onwards, he would continue tweeting about the game almost daily. The quest update appeared to still be in progress. Bear in mind that the last update that was released was all the way back in July of 2013. For the next year or so, progress on the quest update was shared along with more screenshots, such as dungeons, improvements to exploration, music, and so on. Hype for the game was still around and the fanbase only continued to grow. However, there were some people that either just forgot about the game or were starting to lose some faith as to whether this game would ever receive an update. It was nice to see the overall progression of development on the game, but with no updates to the alpha being released, there was nobody to experience any of it. This would become a much bigger problem for a whole other reason, which we'll understand very soon. Or should I say, after the next couple of years of radio silence. Because on the 2nd of July 2017, Wally would leave yet again with no sight or sound. Again, the silence would fall, and Cube World would continue to be more of a mystery than anything else. And to add to this, the game was no longer available, as it was just taken off the store. As time went by, more theories would continue to stew within the community. People wanted to know what was going on. People really wanted to know if this game was ever going to be released and if their money was well spent on the alpha. On the 26th of January 2019, the silence was finally broken as Wally came back with a new tweet. There was no explanation as to where he went, and it was almost as if nothing happened. Wally did stay true to his word, because on this day he made 3 more tweets. One about flying, one about activating fast travel shrines, and finally one about gnomes. But as you could probably guess by now, that was short-lived because Wally again went absolutely silent. But this time for 6 months, only to come back in July to share more screenshots of the game. All this did was prove one thing, that the game was still being worked on, but there were no clear signs as to whether a new update or release would ever come out. At this point, people were expecting him just to disappear again. So far, it seems like Wally would disappear and only come back to reassure people that he hasn't run off with the money. But on the 7th of September 2019, a strange blog post would come from Wally that would explain what's been going on for the past few years. This is what it said word for word. When I released Cube World back in 2013 on our homepage, I was enthusiastic to finally share my game with you. It was a dream come true for me. I wanted to be a game developer ever since I was a kid. As some of you might remember, we got DDoSed as soon as we opened the shop. It might sound silly, but this event traumatized me and kind of broke something inside me. I never told anyone about it, and I don't want to go into details, but I'm dealing with anxiety and depression ever since. Social media didn't improve it, as you might imagine. I'm still not sure if it's a good idea to tell the world about it, but I wanted to give the fans an explanation. There were several points in the past years I considered releasing an update, but every time I was afraid it wasn't good enough. I'm also a bit of a perfectionist, and it made me rework everything from scratch several times. The version I'm planning to release is basically Cube World 2.0. There are still many things I would like to add in the future, but I think this version is already fun. It's really sad to see that this man was discouraged by all the DDoS attacks. Although some people might not see it as that much of a big deal, negativity like this has a different impact on different people. This game was Walle's passion project, and with that came an emotional attachment. These people weren't just attacking a game, they were attacking Walle, so I can only feel bad for him in this case. But either way, after releasing an alpha that people paid for and showed a lot of support for, the lack of any real updates and the inconsistent communication didn't really make any of this better. I think one of the main reasons as to why Walle would just disappear for a while from Twitter would also be due to the negativity that he got online. People were tired of waiting. It's been years since the last update, and a lot of people were just fed up. Of course, on Twitter, people are very dramatic when they are passionate about a project, but there were legitimate questions as to what was going on. Although there was a lot of support for the game and Walle himself, which overall made this divide between people who are quite negative about the project and people who are quite positive. If you know anything about the internet, negativity just hits harder. There's also the issue of perfectionism, which in itself is a recipe for disaster, as things not only take longer to produce, but also leaves you without any feedback, as these updates weren't tested in phases by any of the users. Walle felt the pressure to release anything. He wanted everything to be perfect, but in doing so, he only heightened the expectations, and that just got worse over time as people were expecting something bigger as time went on. On the 6th of September, Walle would announce that Cube World would be released on Steam very soon, sometime later in September or October, confirming that all owners of the alpha version would get a free key for the Steam release. Later that month, on the 20th, the fanbase was blessed with the official Cube World release trailer. This was a 4-minute long video showing off the game along with all the new features that were added to it throughout the past few years, and it was a sigh of relief for a lot of people. There was so much hype surrounding this that even Mr. Beast left a comment. And then only 10 days after that, Cube World was finally released. People could finally play all these new updates, all these new changes that they've been hyped for so long. But this is where things take a darker turn because, oh boy, this was one hell of a surprise. Immediately, people noticed there was something off about the game. It looked similar, but almost reworked in a way. Although Walle did mention at points that he was reworking a lot of systems, people weren't really expecting it to this degree. The mechanics seemed remade. There were a bunch of promised features missing, as detailed in this Reddit post. Even worse, the progression system was totally reworked. In the alpha, you could level and progress as far and as much as you wanted. It was technically infinite, which made the game pretty unique. There was a skill tree, and you could go from region to region without any trouble, just leveling up by killing monsters and collecting new rare loot. But in the Steam release, you don't gain XP via killing monsters. You only level up by finding and collecting artifacts, which on its own isn't the worst design choice, as it encourages you to explore not just for loot but also for something else. However, this wasn't really communicated, so it came as a shock to many people. But the worst thing about this release is that your items were region locked, meaning that all the good gear you collected is useless the moment you cross over to another region, and all of the useful items that you collected, gone. Meaning that there's no real reason to explore further than the region you're in because all sense of progression is now void. People of course weren't happy about this, and a lot of other little things too. The reviews for this game are currently mixed for a reason. There were a lot of strong emotions going around for what just happened. The expectations for this game were subverted, and it left a lot of people just feeling down about the whole situation. Adding to this, people who bought the alpha and forgot about Cube World couldn't even access their Steam key, as it was only available to supporters for a limited period of time, which only annoyed people even more. With With all this backlash and confusion, Wale did a Homer Simpson and faded into the bush. And there's been no sign of him or any update to the game ever since. From the point of this recording, the game is abandoned. But then again, not entirely. I didn't want to just look at what went wrong here, because although the base game has a really annoying progression system, it's still not that bad of a game. Granted, I've not played it nearly as much as most people, so I can't give a solid review of the game. But after playing both the alpha and the Steam release for a few hours, as well as having a look at all the drama, I can see the appeal of the game and understand why people felt let down. Thankfully, Cube World does have some sort of community. It's small, but they do have an active Discord. When I joined, I noticed a couple of people streaming and I jumped in to say hi. We talked about the game a little bit, they took me through the general concept of it all, as well as what went wrong throughout development. When talking about the issue with the region-locked items and gear, they shared a link to me with this mod right here. It's clear that some people still enjoy Cube World, and even though the official release was a bit of a letdown, it's nice to see that even though Wally went completely missing, there is a community out there for people to join if they are interested in picking up this game. Although it's still being sold for about $20 and doesn't have a workshop page, meaning that you're going to have to do a little bit more to mod the game. There's probably not going to ever be another update. It's a shame to see that this game is essentially supported by its abandoned community, but also reassuring at the same time. Cube World for the longest time has been a mystery. A passion project that started off with an enthusiastic developer that went missing for months, even years at a time, with a grand finale where the release of the game left everyone with more questions than answers. So what went wrong? If it wasn't obvious, quite a few things, but I believe the main issue lies with expectations versus reality. For the longest time, everyone was just left with an early alpha version of the game. And although there were signs of progression with new updates promised along the way, nobody had a chance to experience any of it. Wale said it himself. He's a perfectionist. Someone who won't settle for anything less. He kept working on the game until it was perfect to his standard, which is a process that I'm all too familiar with myself. You keep wanting to add new things to it. You keep thinking, oh, I need to add this, oh, this is not perfect, no, I need to change this, and any deadline that you have for yourself just gets pushed back further and further. The only people really testing this game were just him and his wife. There was a beta test at some point, but this was short-lived as the release came out soon after. When you build a game for yourself, anything goes. But when you make a game that people will buy, then communication is a must. It was 6 years since the last update for the alpha, and I think a lot of people rightfully assumed that the big release on Steam would only improve what was already there. But that wasn't the case, because a lot changed all at once, a lot of things were completely reworked, and none of it was properly tested or communicated. If this was the way that the game was always going to be, then I doubt the response would have been so negative. But that's only if the developer made it clear from the start, or at least somewhere down the line. I do honestly hope for the best for Wale, because it's clear that he did struggle throughout the whole process of this game. It almost seemed like he just wanted to get this off his chest and then leave it at that. And if you think about it, this really is a tale of suffering from success. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, this is a passion project that a lot of people also got on board with. And I think the pressure and the attention surrounding it, the expectations from the community, and the anxiety about failure got to Wally in the end. But that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this series, just click on this video right here. And a massive thanks again to my patrons for all the support. It really means a lot to me. And I'll see you in the next one, where I stand on my head.